We live in the best times ever in all of human history. We're richer than anybody has ever been on planet Earth. So I'm an objectivist. I'm a supporter of and adherent to the philosophy of Ayn Rand, the author of Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. So I very much believe in reason, in the the objectivity of reality, and from a moral point of view, I believe in a rational long-term self-interest as the way in which one should live. And I reject the idea of sacrifice to other people, and living for other people. And I also reject the idea of sacrificing other people to me, that is exploiting other people. So very much kind of a rational long-term self-interest. And the only kind of social system, I think, that if you're self-interested, you want to live in, and it's valuable to live in, is a system of freedom, a system in which there's no compulsion, a system in which coercion and force and authority are kind of outlawed, and that system is capitalism. So I'm very much a pro-capitalism, pro-individual rights, and an advocate of freedom.
So I know you give a lot of talks to, well, all different groups, but
Yep.
On one podcast, I heard you talking about giving speeches and discussions and hosting discussions and talks with kids at schools.
Yes.
And so what is it you generally, I know you talk about a lot of different topics, but if you were kind of summarizing your position to those kids, what is it you generally try to get across in the talks?
So, for example, I gave a talk yesterday at an all-girls school here in London, and the talk was basically about the fact that capitalism is this amazing economic, political, social system, that it is the only system that has brought humanity out of poverty, that we are massive beneficiaries of the freedom that we enjoy under capitalism, and that it's kind of tragic and sad that it is such a malign system, that capitalism is hated and despised by almost everybody, and that only capitalism has brought people out of poverty, and so I go through all the facts and evidence and examples of the huge benefits of capitalism. In other schools, I've done talks on things like inequality. So the whole campaign that exists today about the evils of inequalities, I reject that. I view inequality as a metaphysical fact about human nature. We're all unequal, we're all different, we're all going to have produce different results if we go out there and apply ourselves to anything. We all get different grades, we all have different ability when it comes to art. Surprise, surprise, we all make different amounts of money given our different professions. There's nothing surprising about that, there's nothing unusual about that. And indeed, the attempts to reduce inequality, the attempts to artificially create equality between people, always involve taking from some and giving to others, which I consider incredibly unjust. They involve coercion and force and basically theft and redistribution. So I give a lot of talks about the benefits of inequality, the fact that inequality is a feature of freedom. It's not a bug. It's not a problem with freedom. It's actually, when people are free, they are unequal. They're only going to be equal when they're not free. So I'll take freedom over inequality over equality any day.
So you mentioned you talk about some of the benefits of capitalism. What would they be? Like, can you give an overview?
Well, sure. I mean, primarily or most obviously, I'd say the great benefit of capitalism is wealth creation. I mean, the fact is that in a pre-capitalist world, no wealth was created for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Human beings were basically born with the same amount of wealth as they died with. There was no change, there was no progress, there was no advancement, maybe a little bit with Greece and Rome, but then it all declined afterwards. Basically, humanity has been poor, extremely poor, not a little poor, forever. And then in the late 18th century, early 19th century, many countries in the West, primarily the United States and the United Kingdom, embraced capitalism, embraced freedom, embraced what some people call a permissionless society, a society in which you didn't have to ask permission to do what you wanted to do. And as a consequence, massive amounts of wealth were created. People, entrepreneurs, built businesses, created new products, created employment opportunities, and built new technologies. And what we got is the modern world. The modern world would have been unimaginable 200 years ago in terms of the amount of wealth we have. We take a lot of it for granted, but it's capitalism that is responsible for the fact that most kids today are at school because their parents make enough money so that the kids the kids don't have to work. The parents can work and fund the kids' education. The wealth created is responsible for the fact that we have running water, we have sewage systems, we have electricity, we have computers, we have iPhones, we have the internet, we have all of that. All of that are products of the entrepreneurs that were set free to innovate and produce and create and build and reinvent the world under capitalism. Socialism doesn't produce these results. You didn't get this in the Soviet Union. Pre-capitalist societies, feudal societies don't produce this result. The only economic system that produces actual wealth is capitalism. And look, it's not just material wealth. The fact is that capitalism allows people to have more leisure time, which allows them to then become consumers of entertainment, of art. So capitalism makes it profitable to engage in spiritual activities like writing music, performing music, to a much larger extent than it was possible beforehand. There's no accident that the 19th century is this unbelievably rich century with regard to aesthetics, with regard to art, because, again, the human spirit is liberated by capitalism. Capitalism basically is the system of freedom. It's a system in which you don't have to ask for permission. You don't have to get approval, where the government is there to protect your rights and otherwise leave you alone. So there are massive benefits to being free.
So one of the things that really stands out to me is that even if, so they're basically the standard intellectual point of view, what you're taught to think of as like the only intelligent way to think about society is just to start from the assumption that, oh, everything's basically pretty terrible. Capitalism's really evil and awful. Our society is horrendous. And then you have to point out all the problems with it. And I mean, I disagree with that, but also even if I didn't disagree with that, I still think you have to be making that argument from a rational, informed starting point, which is at least appreciating basic facts about history and the progress we've made relative to virtually the entirety of human existence at this point. And that is like the fact that people are so oblivious to that is something which really, like, it shocks me, but is also just so predictable. And it's so
it's shocking. And the fact that they're so depressed about the world today, I mean, is shocking. We live in the best times ever in all of human history. We're richer than anybody has ever been on planet Earth. A poor person in Britain today is richer than the king was 200 years ago, because a poor person today has running water and sewage and electricity and computers and things that were unimaginable to a king, the richest man in the world, 200 years ago, even 100 years ago. And we have no appreciation for that. People continuously are depressed and miserable and think that life is so hard and difficult today. Well, they should go and try living like a peasant did, and most people were peasants 200 years ago. They should try living in a world in which 50% of all children die before the age of 10, living in a world where life expectancy is 35. So your lifespan is very short, and most of it is dedicated to just surviving, somehow gaining the food to survive. People are unbelievably spoiled by how good the world is today, and they have no appreciation of it. And our philosophy is such that we relish our suffering.